The stars above the galaxy shined brightly, but peace among the planets was still far away. The Thalzar Dominion, a powerful alien empire, ruled half the known galaxy. On the other side were the human colonies, brave, stubborn, and always ready to fight for freedom. The two sides had been enemies for many years. Battles had burned planets, and both alien and human families had suffered great losses. But now, something had changed. Talks of peace had begun. A massive space station, named Unity Point, was built right between the human and alien zones. It floated silently in deep space, surrounded by warships from both sides. The station was neutral ground. Here, no one could fight. Here, leaders could speak. And now, a royal visitor was coming to the station, Princess Elira, the daughter of the Thalzar Emperor. She was not just a princess. She was the future empress. The aliens believed she would lead them into a new era. Some wanted her to prepare for more war. Others hoped she would end the violence. But only a few people knew her secret. Long ago, when she was just a child, during one of the bloodiest battles on a planet called Valar Prime, a human soldier had saved her life. He had taken her from the ruins of a burning city and helped her escape. He did not ask for thanks. He did not reveal his name, then he disappeared. Elira never forgot him. Now, years later, she had grown into a wise and strong young leader. She had beauty, grace, and a mind sharper than most warriors. But deep in her heart, she still remembered the boy who saved her. She did not know his name. She only remembered his eyes. Kind, tired, and brave. When the Thalzar Council asked her to attend the peace talks, she agreed. Not just because she believed in peace, but because she hoped that somehow, some way, the human who saved her would be there. What she didn't know was, he was already on the station. His name was Rain. He had once been a young soldier in the human army. He had seen too much war, lost too many friends. When he saved the alien girl years ago, he had not known who she was. She was just a scared child in the middle of fire and death. Saving her felt like the only right thing left to do. After that day, he never fought again. He left the army and disappeared. He changed his name, wore a beard, and took quiet jobs in small places. He lived alone, not wanting to be a hero or a leader. Now Rain worked as a technician on Unity Point. He fixed lights, repaired systems, and stayed far from the powerful people walking its halls. But fate had other plans. One day, while walking through the main plaza of the station, Rain saw a large screen showing a message. "The royal ship of Princess Elira is arriving." He froze. The name sounded familiar. When the ship landed, he stayed hidden in the shadows. From far away, he saw her step out, tall, calm, and beautiful in her royal dress. Her skin had the soft silver tone of the Thalzar. Her long hair shimmered under the lights, and her eyes, he saw them clearly, were the same ones he remembered from years ago, wide, bright, and full of purpose. "She's the child," Rain whispered to himself. "She's the one I saved." He did not know what to do. Should he go to her? Should he reveal himself? Would she even remember him? As he stood there, lost in thought, an alarm rang through the station. It was only a test, but his heart raced. For a moment, it felt like the war was back again. Rain took a deep breath and walked away. He needed to think. He couldn't just walk up to a princess and say, "I saved you when you were small." Meanwhile, Elira was led into a large room prepared for her. Her guards stood around her, alert and serious. But she wasn't thinking about the peace talks. She walked to the window, looking out into the stars. Somewhere out there, on this very station, was the human who had saved her. She could feel it. It was a strange feeling, like a pull in her heart. "I will find you," she whispered, "even if I must search every corner of this place." In the days that followed, the station buzzed with activity. Humans and Thalzar moved through the halls, most ignoring each other. Suspicion was still in the air. But deep within the heart of Unity Point, a moment was drawing closer, when the human and the princess would finally meet again. Neither of them knew how it would happen. But when it did, the entire galaxy would be watching, and what she would say next would shock everyone. The days that followed were filled with tension. Unity Point was a place of negotiations, but beneath the surface, everyone knew that the peace talks between the human colonies and the Thalzar Dominion were fragile. Leaders from both sides sat in the Grand Hall speaking of treaties and compromises, but the real action was happening in the shadows. Rain, however, didn't care about politics anymore. He was just a technician now. His hands were covered in grease, his clothes stained with the oil and dust of machinery. He had no reason to get involved in the high-stakes conversations happening around him. Peace or war, it was all the same to him. He was done with it all. But the princess, she was different. Every time Rain walked through the halls of Unity Point, he couldn't escape the thought of her. He had tried to forget the girl he saved all those years ago, but seeing her now, as an adult, with her eyes full of determination, and strength stirred something inside him he thought he had buried long ago. Rain had been standing in the station's maintenance corridors when he first saw her. She was alone, walking in a quiet part of the station. The guards were keeping a distance, probably under orders to let her move freely, but no one could have known how much she truly wanted to be alone. Rain watched from the shadows as Elira paused in front of a large window, staring out at the stars. Her expression was soft but full of thought. He wanted to walk up to her. He wanted to say something, anything, that might bridge the years between them. But he couldn't bring himself to do it. He was not the same young soldier who had risked everything to save her. He was older now, a man with no place in a war he no longer believed in. And what would she say? What would she think of him now? The princess's gaze swept across the stars, but she wasn't really looking at them. She was thinking about the past, about the man who had saved her life. It was a memory that had stayed with her through every battle, every royal responsibility, and every moment of doubt she faced as the future empress of the Thalzar Dominion. "I know you're out there," Elira whispered to herself. Her words barely made a sound, but they carried a weight far greater than the peace talk she was meant to attend. She knew that somewhere on this station was the man who had pulled her from the fire and the rubble of Valar Prime. She felt it, in her heart, and yet despite everything she couldn't find him. She had asked around, but no one seemed to know who he was. His identity remained a mystery, a shadow in the history of the war. It was almost as if he had vanished on purpose, leaving no trace behind. Elira stepped away from the window, feeling the weight of the decision she was about to make. The peace talks were important, but something inside her told her that finding the human who had saved her was just as important, if not more so. She had a feeling, an unshakable belief, that their meeting could change everything. She couldn't explain it, but she felt it deep in her bones. Meanwhile, Rain had made his way back to his quarters. He didn't want to be there, yet his legs seemed to move of their own accord. When he stepped inside, he threw his toolkit onto the counter and collapsed into the chair. He tried to relax, but the thoughts of Elira kept pulling him back. What was he supposed to do now? As much as he wanted to disappear and leave all the old memories behind, something inside him told him to stay. He couldn't ignore the pull of his past. He had to know what had happened to her. He had to know if she remembered him, if she ever thought about the man who saved her all those years ago. Rain stared at the small photograph on the wall. It was a simple one, taken during his time in the military. He was standing next to his comrades, all of them with smiles on their faces, but Rain knew the truth behind that smile. He had never been a man of joy. He had always been driven by duty, and now, all that was gone. He rubbed his eyes, exhausted, but there was no escaping the thoughts swirling in his mind. The next day, Rain was on the station's upper levels, trying to finish his work when he saw her again. This time, Elira wasn't alone. Her guards were walking a few steps behind her, but she was looking around as if trying to spot something or someone. Rain stepped back into the shadows, his heart racing. He tried to keep his distance, but something was different this time. He knew it. She knew it. There was a connection between them that couldn't be ignored any longer. As Elira turned a corner, she suddenly stopped. Her gaze swept over the room, stopping for a brief moment on Rain. It was only for a second, but it was enough. Her eyes locked with his, and in that moment, both of them knew. The years had passed. The war had come and gone, but one thing remained unchanged: the bond between them. Elira took a step forward, her expression unreadable. Rain's breath caught in his throat. He had been waiting for this moment, unsure if it would ever come, and now, standing in front of him, was the woman he had saved years ago, the woman who would change the future of the galaxy. The space station hummed quietly as Elira stood in front of Rain, her eyes locked with his. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The noise of the busy station seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the two of them in the center of the hallway. The universe felt distant. All that mattered now was this moment, this brief but powerful meeting. Rain was frozen in place. His heart raced, his hands slightly trembling. He had never imagined that the princess, the young girl he saved years ago, would be standing before him like this. She had grown into a confident leader, someone who could command entire fleets. She looked so much like the child he had held in his arms, yet so different. Stronger, calmer, and more powerful. Elira took a step forward, her gaze never leaving his. Her guard stayed a few paces behind, giving her the space she needed, but they were watchful, alert. They had no idea what was happening, nor did they know the significance of this moment. "Do you remember me?" Elira asked, her voice calm but full of emotion. There was no fear in her words, only the quiet certainty of someone who knew they had found something important. Rain swallowed hard. He wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The memories of that day on Valar Prime flooded back. His hands covered in blood, the sound of explosions all around him, the fear and chaos. And then amidst it all, the child who needed help. He had carried her to safety, not knowing who she was or what she would become. The memory of her small face, her wide, bright eyes filled with both fear and hope, was etched in his mind. He had never forgotten her. But now, to see her standing in front of him, so powerful, so regal, was overwhelming. For a long moment, Rain said nothing. He didn't trust himself to speak. His emotions were too tangled, his mind racing with questions. Was it possible? Could she really be the same girl? Was it fate that brought them together again? Finally, Elira stepped closer. "You saved my life," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I was just a child, and you pulled me from the wreckage. You didn't ask for anything. You just saved me." She paused, her voice catching in her throat. "I never forgot you." Rain's heart pounded. She had remembered him. She had remembered the boy who saved her. But what did it mean now? What was she expecting from him? For a moment, he wanted to turn away. He wanted to disappear into the shadows, to leave, behind the past and the memories of a life that no longer felt like his own. But then he saw her eyes, the same eyes that had stared at him in desperation all those years ago. And in that instant, something inside him shifted. He couldn't run anymore. "I didn't expect to see you here," Rain said softly, his voice rough with emotion. I thought you would have forgotten me." Elira shook her head. "How could I forget the one person who showed me that there was more to this universe than just war and violence?" she said. "You taught me that even in the darkest times, there is light. Even when everything else was falling apart, you were there." Rain looked down at the ground, unsure how to respond. She was the future of the Thalzar Dominion, a princess with all the power in the galaxy. And here she was, speaking to him like an equal, as though the years of war, loss, and pain had never happened. "You don't need to thank me," Rain said, his voice low. "I did what anyone would have done. You were just a child, and I couldn't leave you there." Elira smiled softly. "I never thanked you. I didn't even know who you were. But I knew your Kindness was real. Her words made something inside Rain stir. He had always believed that kindness had no place in war, that it was just a weakness. But Elira, standing before him, was proof that it wasn't. Kindness had saved her, had made her who she was today. And now she was offering him something that Rain hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. But the moment didn't last long. A loud cough broke the silence, and Rain looked up to see one of Elira's guards standing nearby, looking impatient. The princess didn't move, though. Her eyes were still on Rain, and she stepped even closer. "There is so much I need to say to you," she said. "But we can't do it here, not with the whole galaxy watching." Rain nodded, understanding the weight of the situation. He wasn't a fool. This was a moment far bigger than both of them. The peace talks, the future of the galaxy, and their own personal history were all tied together now. It wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about what would happen next. "I'll be here," Rain said quietly, meeting her gaze. "I'll always be here if you need me." Elira nodded slowly. "Then I'll find you when the time is right," she said, turning away. But before she walked off, she glanced back at him one last time. "And thank you, Rain, for everything." Rain watched her leave, her guards following closely behind. He stood there for a long time, unsure of what to do. Everything had changed in that brief moment. His past, which he had tried so hard to leave behind, had returned with a vengeance. The following days on Unity Point were tense. Both sides, human and Thalzar, remained cautious, yet there was an unspoken understanding between the people of the station. The negotiations had begun, but there was something more brewing beneath the surface. Everyone was aware that the peace talks held the weight of an entire galaxy, and no one wanted to be the one who made the wrong move. Rain kept to his duties, trying to remain invisible, but the memory of his encounter with Princess Elira kept replaying in his mind. Her face, her words, they were all he could think about. Every moment he spent on the station seemed to pull him closer to a destiny he had never wanted. And yet, despite the fear and uncertainty, he couldn't shake the feeling that his involvement in the galaxy's fate had just begun. It was late one evening when everything changed. Rain was working in a maintenance area, adjusting some wiring for the station's communication systems. The hum of the machinery and the quiet beeping of monitors were the only sounds in the room. He was lost in his work, focused on the task at hand, when suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the corridors. It was followed by a burst of static on the station's intercom. His hand froze mid-motion. "Security breach, all personnel to lockdown positions. The station is under attack," the announcement blared, followed by a flurry of gunfire in the distance. Rain's heart raced. He knew exactly what this meant. An attack wasn't just a random event, it was a message. Someone was trying to stop the peace talks. The humans and the Thalzar had always been on the edge of war, and now someone wanted to push them over that edge. His mind raced. Elira. She was on the station. She was in danger. Without thinking, he grabbed a blaster from the tool cabinet and ran out of the room, heading toward the royal quarters. His training kicked in. He had always been quick on his feet, always able to think under pressure. But this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about her. Elira. Elira had been in her private chambers when the alarm sounded. Her guards immediately went into action, sealing off the doors and securing the area. But Elira was no stranger to danger. She had seen more than her share of conflict in her young life. Her hands clenched into fists as the noise of fighting grew louder in the distance. "They're here," she muttered under her breath. Her mind immediately went to Rain. He had been in the maintenance section when the attack started. She wasn't sure how, but she felt a deep connection to him now, an understanding that they were linked by something much larger than either of them. She had to find him. Her guards tried to hold her back, but Elira was determined. "I'm going out there," she said, her voice firm. "Princess, it's too dangerous," one of her guards argued. "I said I'm going," she replied, her tone leaving no room for discussion. She pushed past them, heading toward the nearest exit. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her resolve was unshaken. Rain arrived at the royal quarters just as Elira emerged from the hallway. He was about to call out to her when a sudden explosion rocked the station, sending a shockwave through the floor. The station's walls trembled as lights flickered. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling. Elira stumbled, but she quickly regained her balance. Her eyes locked with Rain's, and for a moment they both knew what had to be done. Without a word, they turned and ran down the hallway, their footsteps echoing in the silence that followed the blast. The sound of gunfire was getting closer, and they could hear the heavy footsteps of armored soldiers approaching. "We need to get to the main control room," Rain said, his voice calm despite the chaos. "We can lock down the station from there. It's the only way to stop this." Elira nodded. She didn't need to be told twice. She followed Rain as they moved swiftly through the narrow corridors. His movements were fluid, precise, like a man who had lived through countless battles. Elira was no stranger to conflict herself, but she had always relied on others to protect her. This time she would protect herself and the future of her people. The two of them reached the control room just as the doors began to close. Elira slammed her hand against the panel, forcing the doors open. Inside, a group of engineers were frantically trying to override the system's lockdown protocols. The station was under siege, and it seemed that whoever was behind the attack had planned it well. One of the engineers looked up in shock as Elira and Rain entered. "Princess, what are you—" "Get the system back online," Elira interrupted. "We need to seal off the station before they breach the rest of the levels." Rain stood at the door watching for any sign of the attackers. His eyes were scanning every corner, every shadow. He was ready for anything. The engineers worked quickly, their hands flying over the control panels. The hum of the station's systems came to life again, and the doors began to seal off the corridors, cutting off access to the main hall. "Done," one of the engineers said, breathing heavily. "We've sealed the main access points. The attackers won't be able to get through the station's outer defenses." But just as they thought they were safe, a loud, crackling sound came over the intercom. "This isn't over, Princess," a cold voice said. "The war isn't finished. You can't hide forever." The voice was familiar. It was the leader of the Rogue faction, a group of extremists who believed peace with humans was impossible. They had been planning this attack for months. Elira's jaw tightened. She had known this day would come, but hearing those words confirmed what she had always feared. Some would never accept peace. The lights flickered inside Unity Point, the hum of the station systems now a constant reminder of the tension in the air. With the main access points sealed and the attack momentarily halted, there was a brief moment of calm. But Elira knew it wouldn't last long. She had felt the shift in the atmosphere. The Rogue faction wasn't going to give up so easily. She stood in front of the control panel, her fingers brushing lightly over the buttons as she looked at the map of the station. The walls were secure, for now, but they weren't indestructible. Elira knew that if the peace talks were to continue, she needed to act swiftly, decisively. She couldn't let the station fall into the hands of those who believed in nothing but violence and destruction. Rain stood beside her, his presence both reassuring and unsettling. He was a reminder of everything she had learned about herself, everything she had believed in. He was a symbol of hope and bravery, qualities that seemed rare in a galaxy so torn apart by war. But he had been there for her once, and now he was there again, offering his help, his strength, and his loyalty. "You know what needs to be done," Rain said, his voice steady, his eyes never leaving the control screen. "The people here are depending on you, Elira. You're the only one who can stop this." Elira looked up at him, her gaze meeting his. She could see the respect in his eyes, the quiet understanding, and it scared her. She had always relied on the strength of others, her family, her royal advisors, her guards. But now, in this moment, she realized that she had to make the decision on her own. There was no one else to turn to. "Rain," she said softly, her voice full of weight. "What if I can't do it? What if I make the wrong choice?" Rain didn't hesitate. He stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You won't be alone. You never have been, and you never will be. You saved me once, Elira, Now it's my turn to help you." Elira took a deep breath, trying to steady the turmoil inside her. She had been groomed for leadership her whole life, but the weight of the crown, the responsibility of her people, had always been more than she had bargained for. Now, with war looming once again, she couldn't shake the feeling that the fate of her people, and the entire galaxy, rested in her hands. Elira turned back to the control panel, her fingers dancing across the buttons. "I need to contact the Council," she said, her voice filled with determination. "If we don't act now, the station will be lost. The talks, everything we've worked for, it'll all be for nothing." Rain watched her as she worked, his eyes filled with admiration. He had never seen someone so young bear such a heavy burden. And yet, here she was, standing tall, focused on the task at hand. Elira wasn't just a princess. She was a leader. She had been through so much, and yet she stood strong, refusing to back down. But Rain knew that the hardest part was still to come. The rogue faction would not stop until they had destroyed everything Elira and the human colonies had fought for. It was up to them now to finish what they had started. "We have to be careful," Rain said. "The rogue faction won't just let you take control. They'll fight back with everything they have. Are you sure you want to go forward with this?" Elira hesitated for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. She had always known that peace was fragile, that there were those who would never accept it. But now, standing in the face of destruction, she realized that the only way to secure the future of her people and the galaxy was to act with courage, to take the risks that needed to be taken. She nodded. "I have no choice. If I don't make this decision, then we will all be lost." Rain nodded, his expression hardening. "Then I'm with you." As the communication system hummed to life, Elira's voice rang out through the station's loudspeakers. "This is Princess Elira of the Thalzar Dominion," she said, her voice calm but full of authority. "I know there are those among us who believe that peace is impossible, that war is the only way forward. But I stand before you today, not as a princess, but as someone who has seen the destruction, the loss, the pain that comes from endless fighting. I stand before you, not just for my people, but for all of us." Her voice echoed through the station, reaching the ears of every human and Thalzar soldier, every engineer and every diplomat. "I refuse to let fear rule our future. We have come so far, and we will not let the past define us. We will build a new future, together. If you choose to fight, I will fight beside you. But if you choose peace, we will walk that path together." Elira's message was clear. It was not just a call to arms, but a call to unity. She was giving the galaxy a choice, peace or war. And she knew that the path she had chosen was risky. But it was the only path that would lead to a future free of violence and fear. Rain watched as Elira finished her message, her hand still on the control panel. She had made her choice. There was no turning back now. "Now we wait," Rain said quietly. Standing beside her, Elira nodded, her face set with determination. "Now we wait." As they stood there together, the station outside seemed to hold its breath. Would the galaxy choose peace? Or would it be torn apart by war once more? The silence in the control room was deafening. Elira stood still, her hands resting on the console, watching the response from the galaxy unfold on the screens. The messages were coming in fast, communication from the human colonies, the Thalzar sectors, and neutral stations scattered across the galaxy. The words were a mix of fear, anger, and hope, but one thing was clear. Elira's declaration had struck a chord. The question was, which way would the galaxy lean? Beside her, Rain watched the messages, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. He knew that peace was a fragile thing. Even a single spark could set the whole galaxy on fire. Elira had made her choice. She had made the call to stand for peace, to stand for something more than war. But now the real challenge would begin. If the galaxy was to accept her offer, it would require more than just words. It would require action. "This is it," Rain said quietly. his voice filled with determination. "The hardest part is still ahead." Elira turned to him, her face unreadable. "I know," she replied softly. "But we can't turn back now. If we do, everything we've fought for, everything we've worked for, will be lost. I won't let that happen." Her words rang with an undeniable strength. She wasn't just a princess anymore, she was a leader. And in that moment, Rain could see it clearly. The woman before him wasn't just a symbol of royalty, she was a force to be reckoned with. The fate of the galaxy rested on her shoulders, and she was determined to carry that weight. The communication systems buzzed to life, and the screen flickered with a message from the central command of the human colonies. Elira leaned forward, her eyes locked on the message that appeared. "This is Admiral Royce of the Earth Fleet," the message began, his voice steady but with a hint of tension. "Princess Elira, your words have reached us and we are listening. However, we need more than words. The human colonies are not ready to trust the Thalzar just yet. If you want peace, show us. Prove that your people are truly ready to change." Elira's eyes narrowed and she looked to Rain. "What does he mean by prove it?" she asked. Rain exhaled slowly, understanding the weight of the words. "It means they need to see action. Words alone won't be enough. They'll want to see if you're willing to back up your promise with deeds." Elira nodded. She had suspected this was coming. The human colonies, despite their desire for peace, had been scarred by years of war. Their trust was something that could not be easily won back. But she was ready. She had to be. There was no other option. "Get me a direct line to the Thalzar High Council," Elira said, her voice firm. "If the humans want action, we will give it to them. We will show them we are willing to fight for peace." The room was tense as the communication to the Thalzar High Council was established. Elira stood tall, her fingers drumming lightly against the control panel as the video call connected. The familiar faces of the Thalzar Council members appeared on the screen. Their expressions were stoic, their eyes hard with uncertainty. Elira took a deep breath before speaking. "I know you all are watching. The humans are demanding proof of our commitment to peace. They will not believe in our words alone. We must show them. I am ordering the Thalzar fleet to hold off any attacks to show the humans that we are willing to lay down our arms. No more aggression, no more threats." There was a brief silence as the council members exchanged glances. Finally, the leader of the council, a tall figure with a regal presence, spoke. His voice was deep and filled with authority. "Princess Elira, you ask much of us," he said, his tone measured. "You ask us to risk everything for the sake of peace. You ask us to turn our backs on the years of war and distrust that have shaped us. What guarantee do we have that the humans will not betray us once we lower our defenses?" Elira's gaze never wavered. She had expected this. The Thalzar were a proud race and their history of war was long and deep. But she had seen something in them, something that told her they could change if given the chance. "There are no guarantees," she replied, her voice steady. "But this is the only chance we have to secure a future for our people. I believe in peace. I believe that we can change the galaxy together. But we must be willing to take that first step. Will you stand with me?" The council leader's expression softened, and after a long pause, he nodded. "We will stand with you, Princess Elira. For peace we will lay down our arms, but know this. If the humans break this trust, the consequences will be dire." Elira's heart surged with hope, but she knew that the road ahead was far from easy. The galaxy was watching, waiting to see if her words would be backed by actions. The Thalzar were taking a huge risk, and if the humans didn't respond in kind, everything could collapse. The moment the communication ended, Elira turned to Rain. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a glimmer of uncertainty. "It's done," she said quietly. "The Thalzar fleet is on hold. Now we wait for the humans." Rain stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did well, Elira. You've made the right choice." "But what if they don't trust us?" Elira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Rain smiled softly, his eyes filled with a quiet confidence. Then we'll prove them wrong. Together. As the station buzzed with activity, Elira and Rain stood side by side, awaiting the humans' response. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance, but in that moment, Elira felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. They had taken the first step toward peace, and now the universe would decide if it was enough. The days after Elira's bold move were filled with uncertainty. The message had been sent, the action had been taken, and now Unity Point was waiting for the human response. The station was alive with tension. News spread quickly across the galaxy about the Thalzar fleet holding off any further aggression, and the humans had their eyes fixed on what would happen next. The corridors of the station felt colder than ever as Elira walked through them. Her heart was heavy with the weight of what she had done. She had asked the Thalzar to lower their defenses, a decision that had made her own people uneasy. But she had no choice. The future of her people, and the humans, depended on it. There was no turning back now. She reached the communications room and stood in front of the console, her fingers hovering above the screen. The station's security was still tight, but there was no sign of the rogue faction's forces. The quiet hum of the station surrounded her as she waited for the response. Rain was there, standing behind her, his presence a constant comfort. He hadn't left her side since the attack. He had stayed through the long nights, helping her organize and coordinate the station's defenses, offering his strength and calm when things became overwhelming. And now, he stood silently, as if he, too, was holding his breath. Elira turned to him, her voice low. "Do you think they'll respond? Do you think we've done enough?" Rain met her gaze with a steady, unwavering expression. "You've done more than anyone could ask for. The humans now see you're serious. They'll have to respond. You've given them a chance, Elira." She nodded, but still felt the weight of doubt pressing against her chest. "I only hope that I've made the right choice. That this isn't just a gamble that ends with everything falling apart." Rain gave a small smile, his voice steady and comforting. "You've always done what you thought was right. And I believe in you. We all do." Elira took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the screen. The communication signal blinked and she straightened, her hands steadying the console. The message was coming in. She pressed a button, and the screen flickered to life. "This is Admiral Royce of the Earth Fleet," the message began. His voice was calm but tinged with uncertainty. "Princess Elira, we've received your message and we've reviewed the situation. We acknowledge your willingness to take a step toward peace. We are prepared to take the same step. The Earth Fleet will hold its fire, but we need a show of trust, a gesture from your people." Elira's heart skipped a beat. "A gesture of trust," she repeated under her breath. "Please clarify what you mean by that." Elira replied, her voice clear. There was a slight pause, then Admiral Royce continued. "We need proof that the Thalzar are committed to peace. We need to see them pull back their forces in a way that we can see. Only then will we join in and de-escalate the situation on our end. Our fleets are still in position and we cannot lower our guard unless we see you follow through with what you've promised." Elira's mind raced. The Earth Fleet needed more than words. They needed proof, something they could trust. The Thalzar had already shown their willingness to de-escalate, but the humans needed something tangible. She turned to Rain, her voice low. "What do you think? Do we have the resources to do this?" Rain considered it for a moment before answering. "We can do it, but it's risky. Pulling back completely may give them room to attack if they're not truly committed to peace." Elira nodded, but her resolve didn't falter. "I believe in peace. If we back down now, we will never have a chance again. This is the only way forward." Rain smiled, nodding his agreement. "Then let's show them that we mean it." Hours later, the Thalzar fleet began to pull back. The ships moved in unison, creating a clear, visible signal of their commitment to peace. Elira watched the fleets retract through the station's monitoring screens, her heart racing as the world seemed to hold its breath. The Thalzar didn't retreat without consequence. The human fleets still hovered at the edges of the galaxy, ready to strike if needed. But this was the moment of truth. The